The events in this program are inspired by a true story. Names, dates, and details have been changed. Viewer discretion is advised. On this episode of Bizarre Murders.
Oh my gosh! Patricia!
When a young hippie is murdered in her co-op.
Oh! Help! Somebody!
Detectives turn to her free-loving friends to track down her killer.
Did you hear anything that sounded out of the norm?
No, man.
But when a strange clue leads to a dead end.
I told you I didn't do it, man.
They fear the summer of love might end with a killer going free.
So what was the motive?
Ashbury, San Francisco, 1970.
It's open, dude.
John is a straight-laced doctor, married to his homemaker wife, Leanne. He has 2 daughters who live in a hippie co-op in the heart of free love.
Hello, young man. I'm looking for Patricia and Susan.
Who?
Patricia and Susan.
Patty and Susie. Yeah, they're down the hall to the right, the room on the right.
Right. Thank you.
He's paying a visit to convince his daughters to leave the hippie commune and come back home to his safe suburban bungalow.
Girls?
But when he walks into the room, he makes a horrifying discovery.
Oh my gosh! No! Patricia! Sweetie! No! Help! Help! Somebody!
Detective Fredericks, a rookie with the San Francisco PD, is called to the scene of the crime.
Sorry, she's not good with strangers.
This is his first murder scene, and he's eager to prove his chops.
I'm very sorry for your loss.
He determines that Patty was bludgeoned to death with a lava lamp. He finds a bloody fingerprint and a man's glove lying in a pool of blood. He believes it belongs to the killer. He also finds a sketch of a young woman who appears to be Patty.
I remember when I was a new agent, so I feel Detective Frederick's pain. Your first murder investigation can be pretty intimidating, especially when you've got evidence that raises more questions than it answers. Did the killer go there with the intent to kill? Or was it a crime of opportunity? Was it a sexual assault or a robbery? And why did the killer leave behind a sketch of the victim? This is a challenging crime scene for a seasoned detective, much less a rookie. My advice, just 1 foot in front of the other, brother.
Do you know of anyone who had issues with Patty?
No, man. No, she was a sweet girl. No one would want to hurt her.
Patty's roommates tell Detective Fredericks that her sister Susie is on tour with her band, so Patty was staying alone in her room.
And was there anyone suspicious in the house at all last night?
We don't keep a sign-in sheet, man. Society's rules aren't ours.
Well, did you hear anything that sounded out of the norm?
No, man. Actually, now that I think of it, I heard a scream.
And?
I didn't think anything of it. I just thought it was one of the girls, you know, like getting it on. So.
And what time was that?
I was tripping, man. I wasn't taking notes.
Well, did the dog bark at all?
No. And you know what? The pooch is pretty vocal if she doesn't know you. I mean, you walk up and she'll just raise a holy hell.
So the killer knew Patty. Or else the dog would have barked.
If you say so, man.
As an investigator, I know there's nothing more annoying than unreliable witnesses, especially when they're out of their heads on weed and goofballs. But as always, man's best friend comes to the rescue. The fact that Poppy didn't bark signals to Fredericks that when the killer walked into the room, he or she was no stranger.
I'm gonna need to grab everyone's fingerprints before I leave.
Yeah, of course. We're here to help you, man. I mean, we all loved Patty. She was a sweet girl, man. Brother, chill out, man.
I'm not your brother, dude.
Detective Fredericks determines that nothing was taken from Patty's room, so he's able to rule out robbery. The autopsy reveals there was no sexual assault, and time of death is estimated between 12 and 18 hours before she was found.
So what was the motive?
I'm just gonna need your fingerprints.
Yeah, of course.
Detective Fredericks brings Patty's father, John, down to the station for questioning.
Can you think of anyone who would want to hurt your daughter?
She spent her time with a lot of seedy characters, so who knows who she came into contact with.
And how was your relationship with Patty?
Strained, to be honest.
Is that so? So you had a strained relationship with your daughter? Why don't you tell me a little bit more about that?
We had this big fight a couple of months ago.
John wants his daughters to go to college, find a nice man to marry, and become homemakers.
What the hell is going on in here?
Dad, you can't just barge in on us like that.
It's my house, my rules. When you start paying the bills, you can make the rules. Give me that.
You can't take
You
that.
need to stop hanging around with those hippie types.
Dad!
But it's the summer of love, and Patty and Susie don't want to conform to society's rules. They aren't interested in landing a husband or pumping out babies.
You're throwing your lives away with this lifestyle of yours.
Patty wants to be a model, and Susie wants to play guitar in a band.
You girls should move to Iowa.
He threatens to send them to live in the Midwest with their grandmother if they don't shape up.
Okay, you know what? Don't even worry because we're already gone.
Where are you
We're
going?
going. We're leaving because clearly you don't want us here. Here, puppy. Come on. Come on. Let's go.
Don't think you can come crawling back here.
We won't.
You're gonna regret this.
Susie and Patty move out of their parents' house,
Suze, that sounds groovin'.
Thanks, man.
cutting off all ties with them.
Hey, are you gonna finish rolling that blunt or what?
I want to make sure it's perfect.
Susie and Patty are doing what a lot of kids, including myself, did in the 70s. They're ditching anything that even resembled their parents' life and are embracing peace, love, and of course, weed. My parents aren't going to see this, right?
We didn't see eye to eye on almost everything.
Where were you last night?
Home alone. My wife's visiting her mother.
Do you have anyone who can verify your whereabouts?
Like I said, I was home alone. You don't think I did this, do you?
John's relationship with his daughters was anything but peace and love. And while it's hard to imagine a father killing his daughter, trust me, I've seen stranger things. It's not too far-fetched to think that he went over there to convince them to come home. They refused, their fight escalated, and he simply lost control. Case closed.
I'm gonna have to ask you to do something for me, sir.
Detective Fredericks asks John to try on the glove the killer left at the scene of the crime.
Doesn't fit.
If the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit. Remember that line? Yeah, that's one for the history books. But despite the debacle that was the O.J. Simpson case, it's still a good way to help eliminate a suspect. Back when I was starting out, technology was limited and DNA databases didn't exist. So these elimination techniques might seem a little old-fashioned, but it's all we had.
The results of the fingerprint test confirm that neither John nor any of Patty's roommates are the killer.
Well, I guess that settles it. You're free to go.
Find the person who did this.
Sir, I promise you, I'm doing everything I can.
Looking for a new lead, Detective Fredericks pores over Patty's diary. It reveals that she had affairs with 8 men over the last 6 months.
He took off my blouse slowly and then started to slip off my skirt.
The age of Aquarius, with all of its free love, does not bode well for murder investigations. The song I Get Around was popular for a reason, you know what I'm saying? But for cops, the problem with too many lovers is that you have too many suspects. And too many suspects means a whole lot of confusion.
As he nears the end of the diary, Detective Fredericks discovers something that piques his interest.
Yesterday, I met the coolest cat at an art show. His name is Davy. An hour after we met, we shagged on the carpet.
Detective Fredericks learns that Davy is a well-known artist in the hippie scene who has a studio downtown.
Bingo.
This is what I call a good day in Copland. It's basically a lead that could crack the case wide open. Detective Fredericks knows that Patty was likely killed by the person who drew the sketch of her and left it at the murder scene, and who she knew intimately. And lo and behold, the final entry in her diary is about a lover who also happens to be an artist. As investigators, you never rely on getting a lucky break, but when you do, you thank the detective gods and move on.
Davy?
Yeah, man.
I'm sorry to tell you that Patty was killed a couple days ago.
Detective Fredericks, determined to solve his first murder case, believes he may have tracked down the killer.
I can't believe that. This is tragic. How could such a bright light be extinguished so soon, man? Patty, what do you mean, man? That's terrible news.
Is Patty your girlfriend?
Girlfriend? What's that even mean, man? No, we just had this connection. It's this vibe, you know?
Sure. Where were you Tuesday night?
I was at an artist's retreat in Mendocino, man. I just got back this morning.
Detective Fredericks, suspicious of the convenient timing of Davy's retreat, asks him to come down to the station for further questioning.
I didn't hurt Patty, man.
We'll see about that. I just need you to do something for me. It'll just take a second.
I told you I didn't do it, man.
While Detective Fredericks runs Davy's fingerprints, he asks him to try on the glove. Detective Fredericks is informed that Davy's alibi checks out.
You're free to go. But before you go,
The detective shows Davy the sketch that he found at the scene of the crime, hoping for some insight into the mind of the killer.
by looking at that, can you tell anything about the artist?
That's no artist, man. That's an amateur. You dig?
This is the frustrating part about detective work. Dead ends. Detective Fredericks now has 0 leads on this would-be artist/killer. Back to the drawing board.
Later that day,
Please have a seat.
Susie arrives home from her music tour after hearing the news about her sister.
I'm so sorry for your loss.
What happened to Patty?
Detective Fredericks tells Susie that they think Patty knew her killer, and he may be an amateur artist.
Do you know anyone that fits that description?
No, everybody loved Patty.
Anyone she worked with or lived with?
Well, there was this one guy. His name was Jeffrey.
Susie tells the detective that she remembers a wannabe artist who used to live in the co-op.
He was really creepy, and he always used to follow me around and sketch me.
Does this look familiar at all?
Yeah. That's me.
Whoa. Detective Fredericks thought the sketch was Patty. If it's Susie, that's a whole different ballgame, or peace circle, or whatever you want to call it. Basically, Susie's revelation opens up a whole can of worms. You dig?
Are you sure that's you? What makes you say that?
Because I have tons more just like that one.
Oh.
This is what detectives call a whopping curveball, for lack of a technical term, and for a rookie detective, that's a pretty big setback. So now he's left with the big question. If the drawing is Susie and not Patty, then why was it left at the crime scene?
Susie's a musician, I'm not gonna.
Oh, nah.
Hey, man.
Hi.
Welcome, dude. It's good
Hello.
to see you, man.
How's everyone doing?
Yeah, sit down, sit down.
Hi.
Hey.
Susie tells Detective Fredericks that a guy named Jeffrey used to live in their house.
I'm Jeffrey.
Hi, I'm Susie.
He would sketch portraits of her all the time.
Would you mind if I draw you?
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
Cool.
Despite his lack of talent, he thinks he's the next big thing to hit the art world. He doesn't let anything come between him and his dream until he meets Susie.
You're very beautiful.
Thank you.
At first, Susie is flattered. But soon, Jeffrey can't seem to draw anything other than Susie
Susie,
and starts to follow her around the house.
can I draw you? The light is so beautiful in here.
Yeah, I guess.
I thought you wanted to draw.
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
You call yourself an artist? Dream on.
Eventually, Jeffrey's attention turns to obsession.
Jeffrey, what are you doing?
Sorry, I was just...
Go away.
I'm sorry.
Susie can't go anywhere without Jeffrey's eyes and a sketch pad following.
Jeffrey, what are you doing?
I'm just...
Get out, you freak!
You're so beautiful.
Get out!
This is borderline stalker behavior, but here's the thing. A typical stalker doesn't bring their sketch pad along for the ride, so Jeffrey's got more serious issues going on, and one way or another, that means trouble for Susie.
Sorry, brother, that's crossing the line. You gotta go.
I just can't draw anything else but you, Susie.
That is not our problem, Jeffrey.
Peace, brother.
Jeffrey is eventually kicked out of the co-op.
He gave me sketch after sketch after sketch, and I never knew where to put them. I just threw them in my closet. I probably have hundreds more just like this one.
Detective Fredericks tells Susie that he'll need to collect the sketches for evidence.
Okay, but if he was obsessed with me, why did he hurt Patty?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
I don't know.
Patty wasn't cool with Jeffrey stalking her sister, so he could have been looking for revenge. Or maybe he thought that Susie would give him more time if Patty wasn't in the picture. Or maybe Jeffrey's not the killer at all and he's just an eccentric artist. Detective Fredericks already made the rookie mistake of assuming, so he's going to be careful this time.
With no registered address for Jeffrey, detectives ask Susie to work with a sketch artist to compose a physical likeness of him.
Here you go.
And the cops plaster it all over the city, hoping someone will recognize him and turn him in.
The thing about the 70s is cops didn't have the technology that we have today. This is before social media, where you could find a digital footprint of a perp within seconds and track him down. Back then, you had to do a lot more legwork. Think of this as an old school Facebook. Cops want to tap into a social network, and the only way they can do that is by posting his face in the areas a wannabe hippie artist would hang out.
Meanwhile, Jeffrey, amateur artist extraordinaire, believes he has just killed the object of his obsession and is finally free to explore his creative genius.
Hey, Kathleen.
Wow, you're smiling.
I feel great. I'm so ready to unwrap the true artist inside me. You know?
Cool.
This guy is fooling himself if he thinks he's headed for greatness, with or without his muse. I know I'm just the man, but even I could draw a better banana than this low-rent Andy Warhol wannabe.
Fearing she may be taking an art class with a killer, Kathleen makes a phone call to the police.
Yes, hi. I'm not sure, but I think I'm sitting next to the guy in the wanted poster.
Detective Fredericks gets a phone call from a fellow artist who believes that Jeffrey, who's wanted for questioning in the city's latest murder, is in her art class.
Is your name Jeffrey?
Yeah.
I'm gonna need you to come down to the station with me for some questioning.
What for?
In connection with a murder. I'm just gonna show you a few things.
Detective Fredericks tries to pin the sketch found at the murder scene on Jeffrey.
Recognize that at all?
No.
How about this one? Or this one? Or this one? This one? How about this one? Should I continue?
Okay, okay, it's my artwork. I like to draw Susie. She was beautiful.
Why was one of your sketches found at the murder site?
I don't know.
Detective Fredericks asks Jeffrey to try on the glove that was found at the scene of the crime.
It doesn't fit.
Try pulling a little harder. Well, strike 3 for you. Are you ready to talk?
I had no choice.
What do you mean?
I would never become the artist I was meant to be with her alive.
As a motive for murder, it may sound far-fetched, but obsession can do strange things to people and can actually cause them to lose sight of reality.
Jeffrey admits that the moment he met Susie, he was overwhelmed by her beauty and talent. His admiration soon turned to infatuation.
Jeffrey, what is this?
This is Susie.
He becomes unable to think about, much less draw, anything but Susie.
This is a still life class, not a portrait class.
But she's my muse.
Make the fruit your muse.
His art teacher tells him that he'll flunk out of her class if he doesn't learn to draw the basics, and never amount to anything if he continues to draw the same model over and over. A frustrated Jeffrey tries to master the basics, but no matter how hard he tries, he's only able to draw Susie. Jeffrey becomes more and more obsessed, until he eventually becomes unhinged.
I can't take this anymore!
Finally, in a desperate attempt to erase Susie from his mind and become the Picasso he knows he can be, he makes a drastic decision.
I have to get rid of her, to free myself.
So this takes the phrase tortured artist to the extreme. He somehow believes that if he just gets rid of Susie, he'll be able to release his artistic genius and become the next Van Gogh. Wait a minute. Didn't Van Gogh cut off his ear before he went mad?
Hi, Poppy. Hey.
I can't take this anymore.
I have to get rid of her.
I have to destroy her.
To free myself.
I can't take this anymore!
Good riddance, Susie.
Having freed his tortured mind, Jeffrey is able to move on and explore his creative genius.
What I don't get is, if you're so fixated on Susie, why did you kill her sister, Patty?
I didn't kill Patty. I killed Susie.
No, you killed Patty.
No, I killed Susie.
No, you killed Patty.
No, I killed Susie.
No, you didn't.
When Jeffrey sees Susie, he realizes the full extent of his fate.
No.
No! No! No!
Whoops, that's one you can't take back. What do you do when you've just killed the wrong girl in order to free your inner artist? You rot in jail, that's what you do. To everything there is a season. And this cool cat's gonna be chilling in prison for a very long time.
After confessing to killing Patty, Jeffrey is convicted of first-degree murder. He is sentenced to life in prison.
In Jeffrey's mind, his potential as an artist was somewhere between Da Vinci and Dali, if he could only unleash it. His obsession with Susie and the fact that he could only draw her convinced Jeffrey that if he could only get rid of his muse, he might finally master his art. In reality, his true talent probably lies somewhere between narcissism and delusion. And now it turns out Michelangelo is not only stuck in jail for the rest of his life, but he's also trapped in a prison of his own mind, doomed to draw Susie forever. Peace out.
Town sweetheart goes missing and everyone is a suspect. Could it be the married man she was seeing on the side? The irate customer who won't take no for an answer? And why is her brother being so helpful? When every new avenue leads to a dead end, police will have to put this puzzle together piece by piece. Appleton, Wisconsin, 2007. Gloria McLean had long been Appleton's pride and joy. Having spent the majority of her childhood on a semi-popular 1990s sitcom, she was as close to celebrity as many in her town would ever encounter. After her stardom faded, Gloria returned to Appleton to attempt a new life. She graduated from school with top honors and eventually settled into a new job running the loans department of the Appleton Savings Bank. Even when her life was going at a meager pace, she continued to be the favored daughter of her town. So, everyone in Appleton was quick to notice when Gloria went missing.
When somebody who's very loved in a community goes missing, it's not surprising that people want to come out and help, and they come out in droves. But the problem you have with that is that sometimes they're not doing things that the police would actually have them do, and it causes more problems than it does help.
After 2 nights of Gloria's absence at home, her brother Paul McLean files a missing persons report to the local authorities. Paul McLean managed to be everything that Gloria was not. After a prank on his sister went horribly wrong, Paul sustained a back injury that made his confidence take a nosedive. He could no longer play sports, and school did not come easy for him. He began to isolate himself, obsessing over Japanese anime, and spending his free time testing new combinations of sodas. Knowing he was the ridicule of the town, Paul sought to prove everyone wrong by attending the local community college, but at a much more deliberately slow pace. Since Gloria and Paul's parents died, the two have lived in the old family house. Gloria always worried about her brother's financial state, and since the house had already been paid off, it was easier for the two to just continue living there. Until Paul graduated college, of course. Paul reports Gloria missing with great concern and distress. When asked if he knows of anyone who might kidnap his sister, he responds with one name: Darren Tooley.
Anytime anybody goes missing, the first thing detectives are going to focus on is that person's inner circle. The second thing they're going to do is try to whittle down the list of suspects. But Darren is not going to get marked off this list.
Detective Diana Cox leads the case and begins turning her attention towards Darren Tooley. Police learn that Darren is an artist and local celebrity, often found painting in the middle of the town park. Darren has also been married to his wife, Jonah, for 10 years. She's a real estate agent, and recently, she and Darren have not been seen together in public for quite some time. Now detectives understand why that is. Paul believes Darren has been having an affair with Gloria. While Detective Cox began tracking down Darren Tooley, Paul starts making missing person flyers to help find his sister. Police are skeptical of Paul's efforts. The town has long considered Gloria and Paul's relationship a rocky one. Paul's guilt at holding his sister back only amplifies the fact that he constantly lives in Gloria's shadow. It's difficult to tell if Paul is doing this out of love for his sibling or just a familial obligation. Detective Cox arrives early to Darren Tooley's house and finds his wife, Joanna, relatively at peace, as though she is entirely unaware of the possibility her husband could be cheating on her. Joanna tells Detective Cox that Darren was headed towards Gordon Bullboy's nature preserve, but that's not out of the ordinary for him.
If you have a friend who comes up to you and says, "I need to disappear without a trace for a long period of time," raise the red flag if it hasn't already been raised for you. That's strange. And Darren decides that he has to do that. I bet he's finding some pretty good inspiration elsewhere, don't you think?
Detective Cox sets out for Gordon Bullboy's nature preserve, but she finds that Darren is not listed among the campers at the park's registration. She returns to the station with a new idea. She goes through Gloria's credit card payment history as well as her recent phone calls, but there is nothing out of the ordinary that Cox finds worthwhile to investigate. Later that day, Paul McLean returns to the station after one of his classes to infer how the investigation is going. Detective Cox gives him the only theory she can compose. She believes that Gloria and Darren have likely run off together. She explains that with no evidence, no body, and no witnesses, it is difficult to assess whether Gloria ran away or was kidnapped.
When you're dealing with the family of a missing person, the amount of information you give them is critical. Nobody needs to remind Paul what the other option is.
It's gonna be all right.
Paul becomes visibly upset, claiming that Gloria would never run away so long as she had to take care of him while he was getting through college. Detective Cox does her best to control Paul's explosive temper and tells him to continue trying to call Gloria over the next few days. Paul leaves disgruntled, but not at a complete loss. Later that day, Detective Cox receives a call from someone in Memorial Park claiming that they found a suspicious package that they believe police should investigate. Police arrive on the scene to discover a sizable suitcase lying near a large electrical tower and River Creek. Carefully, they pop it open, only to find a sight that sickens them to their stomachs. Detective Cox pops open the lid of the suitcase and finds a woman's naked torso. After they recover from the ghastly sight, they quickly bring in the body to test it for fingerprints or some kind of identification, but they find neither. With no security cameras surveilling the area, police question nearby witnesses, but nobody claims to have seen who dropped off the suitcase. And many note the smell kept most of them from even approaching it. Police then ask if they know who it was that called them to the scene, but no one steps forward claiming they did so.
0.
Detective Cox warrants a search of Gloria and Paul's home, hoping to find either DNA evidence or something else to give them a lead. But when Cox arrives, she discovers that all of Gloria's suitcases are gone, and that the entire house has been cleaned from top to bottom, except for Paul's room, which is a total mess. Paul tells Cox that Gloria was a neat freak, and the week before she disappeared, she spent nearly all her time spring cleaning the entire house, but he didn't let her touch his room. Cox is astounded as she's unable to find any DNA that could possibly help identify if the torso in the suitcase belonged to Gloria or not. They search her bathroom for toiletries, but found that they have been cleared out. Cox asked Paul if he ever saw her packing her suitcase, but Paul claims he never saw anything that would suggest she was going traveling.
Detectives have just found a torso in a suitcase. This is either somebody who's too good at faking their own death, or it's a murder victim. They have, obviously, the torso's DNA, but there's no match with any database, so they have no idea who this person was.
Not wanting the investigation stalled, Paul tells Detective Cox that he remembers hearing his sister complaining about a customer she had at the bank. The customer was screaming at the top of his lungs and making a big scene. Detective Cox visits Gloria's bank and pulls up a list of customers that she had previously denied loans to. There she finds the name of Tim Sparks and calls his cell phone number.
Hello, Tim.
Tim, a repentant con man with a history of business scams, answers, and Cox asks him about his involvement in a scene in the bank just a week ago with Gloria McLean. Tim is surprised to be asked about the incident. Detective Cox asks him if he would be willing to come down to the police station for an interview.
Yeah, that's a problem. Currently, I'm unable to move or walk.
When Cox presses as to why, Tim explains that after he exploded on Gloria in the bank, he was so angry on his drive home that he got into a massive car wreck that broke both of his legs. He says he will be in the hospital for a few weeks and will be unable to drive due to his broken legs and lack of car. Cox looks up Tim's medical records from the nearby hospital to discover that his story is true.
What they thought was a break in the case turned out to be just another dead end. If this guy was in the hospital the day after his fight with Gloria, how can he be responsible for her disappearance? I mean, look at the guy. He's got broken legs. He's got no mobility. He can't drive. He could have nothing to do with it. And if he had dumped it in the park, somebody might have noticed a hospital bed.
Then another anonymous call comes in with a new tip. A new suitcase has arrived in Memorial Park. Detective Cox finds the suitcase on the other side of the park under a tree, a long shot away from where they found the torso. Preparing for the worst, police open the case, rearing back at the sickening smell of two arms cut off at the shoulders. Cox is quick to get the parts to the lab as they have to make sure that the arms are a match with the torso they found days earlier.
No prints could be taken because whoever did this burned the fingerprints off. The first thing you want to do, though, is match that arm to that torso, because if they don't match, you don't have one dead body. You have parts of two.
A blood match confirms that the arms and the leg do, in fact, belong to the torso discovered days before. But the question of who the torso belongs to still hangs in the air. To make matters worse, police have still been unable to find Darren Tooley, who is now the investigation's only notable suspect. As Detective Cox is about to head home for the evening, she is stopped by a man who has just entered the police station. He said that he desperately needs to speak with police, and he's carrying a suitcase. The man in the police station identifies himself as Darren Tooley, the man police assume is having an affair with Gloria McCain. Darren claims he just got back from an artistic journey in the wilderness, and that when he returned home, a suitcase was waiting on his doorstep. He says he has not yet opened the suitcase, but his wife told him to immediately come to the police station in order to clear things up. Detective Cox interrogates Darren while her forensic team analyzes the suitcase. When they open it, they discover a leg that is cut off at the hip. In the interrogation room, Darren repeats his claim that he was waltzing around in the wilderness the past week and that he hadn't talked to Gloria in nearly a month.
Darren's alibi is convenient. In fact, it's too convenient. Try walking into a police station and telling the detective I couldn't have been involved in the murder because I was out alone in nature getting inspiration. This is the look you'll see on the detective's face.
To get an interrogative advantage, Detective Cox has her team bring in the contents of Darren's suitcase. Darren is appalled to see the body parts and immediately turns pale white. His story quickly changes. Darren admits that he wasn't in the wilderness the past week, but he also didn't kill or kidnap anyone. He had spent the last week living with a different girlfriend at her apartment in Chicago. He claims he broke up with Gloria a month before because he was worried she would find out about his new girlfriend and that Gloria would tell his wife, Joanna, about his many affairs.
It's a very damning story, but not anything beyond what someone would say to get out of prison for murder. I'm just going to give you one word: corroboration. Somebody's got to corroborate it.
Okay, I'll even give you a number.
Darren gives Cox the phone number of his Chicago girlfriend, Rebecca. Detective Cox calls Rebecca and is told that Darren's story is true. But Detective Cox wants more evidence. Anyone can have a friend lie for you. She asks if Darren has a receipt for his plane ticket, but Darren gets quiet.
You're seeing another girl.
Darren explains that a different girlfriend bought him the plane ticket to Chicago.
This is unbelievable. I mean, how many girlfriends does this guy have? I can imagine the police are probably in there saying, I hope it's this guy, because I want to put this sleazeball away.
Detective Cox allows Darren to call his third girlfriend, and an email receipt of his plane ticket is sent to Cox's account.
You can go.
Yeah.
With another lead effectively flushed down the toilet, detectives are stumped at where to turn next. They decide to set their sights on the only other person they believe could be involved: Gloria's brother, Paul.
Looking for my sister Gloria, who's still missing.
Detective Cox finds Paul out about town, making a video plea for the people of Appleton to be on the lookout for Gloria. In his arms, missing flyers that have been stapled all over. Paul explains to Detective Cox that he has been putting up flyers after class every day. Detective Cox asks Paul if he would be willing to come in and answer a few more questions.
I don't understand why can't you just ask me here?
Paul flips into a rage. He screams that no one is taking him seriously and that interrogating him is a waste of time and resources. In his anger, he throws down the flyers. Detective Cox becomes even more suspicious about Paul's outburst.
It's not normal for an innocent person to flip out when they're asked to assist in an investigation. And when that happens, it raises a red flag.
Detective Cox finally manages to convince Paul to come in for questioning, though Paul says he will only do so if he is allowed to drop off his things at home. Cox reassures him that his personal possessions will be just fine as she leads him to her cruiser. As they enter the station, Paul asks if his bag will be searched, as is the usual protocol at a police station. But Detective Cox says she will let it slide this once, hoping to gain his trust back. Detective Cox instructs another detective to take the bag into the evidence room, but not to open it until she gets permission from Paul, because she needs a warrant to do so on her own. In the interrogation room, Paul is visibly nervous and shaken. Cox recalls that every time she has seen Paul, he has been dragging his backpack behind him. Paul confirms that he has a rolling backpack due to his back injury, and every time he has seen Detective Cox, it has been after he has finished up a class. But Detective Cox brings up something that Paul hadn't mentioned when she was visiting their house. The past week was also the local community college's spring break, meaning that he was lying. Paul turns pale white. Detective Cox asks Paul if he's hiding anything in the bag he has been carrying around. With a heavy sigh, Paul agrees to allow the forensic team to look through his backpack. Detective Cox gives them the go-ahead to check the bag that Paul has been guarding so suspiciously. The forensic team opens Paul's bag to find a terrible sight. Gloria McCain's head.
Hey, I did it.
Paul confesses the people of Appleton knew the bright side of Gloria, but they didn't know her dark side, and that she was prone to violent outbursts. The night of her disappearance, she came home from work and flew into a rage, blaming Paul that he was the reason Darren dumped her.
You ruined my freaking life, Paul, seriously. Darren left me. Mom and Dad are dead. I have nothing but you.
She claimed that Paul was responsible for everything horrible in her life, and even leered out and smacked Paul across the face. In his own fit of rage, Paul struck his sister in the back of her head, killing her. Instantly regretting his actions, he cut her body up and placed them in old suitcases, dropping them off around the town and at Darren's house, hoping to implicate him as the real murderer.
Every once in a while, a case is so bizarre, so unreal, so inhuman, that it shows once again that truth is stranger than fiction.
The owner of a local restaurant is shot dead and an armed robbery gone awry. His beloved pet parrot is stolen by a customer who meets her fate at the hands of the robber. Now, there are 2 dead bodies, and the only witness has feathers and a beak. Polly won a cracker. Living peacefully in his small apartment just down the street from his diner, small business owner Morty Nelson rises from bed and starts to get ready for his day. With no close family, the first thing he does every day is say hello to his only companion, a talkative parrot named Crackers.
Hello. Good morning.
Hi.
Hi.
Morty has devoted his life to his pet, spending the past 7 years teaching Crackers a multitude of tricks and words.
Let's go.
Even renaming his restaurant the Birdcage Bar and Grill in Crackers' honor. Morty opens the diner with his cook Pedro, expecting a slow afternoon. He places Crackers on his perch in the corner, hoping that the bird's charm will bring in some customers.
Literally need you to talk me up some business today, okay?
Ever since his adoption, Crackers has become a local celebrity.
Hey, Crackers. What's up, Crackers?
Hey, Birdie.
Qué lindo estás, Crackers.
And Morty has even trained his bird to greet returning patrons by name, making him the highlight of meals for many customers.
Oh, such a cutie. Being a celebrity, any kind of celebrity, even a local celebrity like Crackers, it's kind of a double-edged sword because people want to come around you, they want to flock to you, and that's good and bad because sometimes some of those people are shady. And when those shady people get involved in your life, sometimes things go bad, and they go bad quickly. Right, Crackers?
On this Friday afternoon, Morty realizes that this is the second month in a row in which business has been slower than usual. He sends his cook home, afraid he won't have enough money to pay him for a full day's work. Just an hour later, Morty is fixing up a dessert for an old patron in the diner, a beautiful woman named Regina DeLang, who has taken a liking to Crackers. As Morty heads back to the kitchen to wash some plates, a man enters the diner. He looks to Regina and flashes a sultry smile. Despite not knowing him, she smiles back. But when Morty returns from the kitchen, the man pulls out a gun and shoots Morty dead. Before Regina can scream, the man turns and points the gun at her. Not a peep, he says with his glare. The man goes straight to the money box behind the counter and grabs all the cash. Regina watches, silent, terrified. It's Crackers who begins to shout. The man shoots the parrot a murderous glance, but Crackers shouts on. So, he shoots the parrot a cold, hard bullet. He misses, but Crackers shuts up. The man approaches Regina and asks for her license. He takes a look and gives her a parting gift. If she tells anyone about the murder, he will track her down and kill her.
I'm not gonna tell anyone!
Then he winks and disappears. Regina quickly pulls out her purse, pays for her meal in cash, grabs Crackers, and runs home. When Regina reaches her apartment, she picks up the phone to call the police, but then puts it down. She remembers he will kill her if she talks.
Everyone reacts differently to traumatic events, and this lady had no idea that staying for dessert was going to drag her into a homicide. And the icing on this cake is that her life will be threatened if she calls the police.
And what about Crackers, she thinks? She decides she'll keep him until police are able to solve Morty Nelson's murder on their own.
In her confused stupor, Regina made a significant mistake. She took something that was recognizable by anybody in town. So what does she do? She can't give it to somebody because they'll know immediately who it is. And here's the problem. If you've seen a murder and you don't report it, you could be considered an accessory after the fact.
Police arrive at the restaurant and begin an investigation. On the case is Detective Laura Brewer, a new transfer from a district in Harlem. Brewer leads the charge in search for evidence, but the bar and grill doesn't offer much. There are no security cameras to capture what took place, no eyewitnesses, and police can't decide on a motive. What was the initial target of the robbery? Was it the cash missing from the money box, or was it the famous bird in the window?
Police have seen it all. They've seen people kill for drugs, for memorabilia, even for small amounts of cash. Everything has a price tag, so they can't rule out the thought that somebody killed for crackers.
Detective Brewer discovers her only clue on a table, a half-eaten cupcake, a bill overpaid in cash, a seemingly random bullet hole from above Cracker's perch, and bright orange lipstick on a coffee cup.
These are clues that lead to a number of different and conflicting conclusions. If this was a robbery, why was the money left over? And why did the person massively overpay? Second, if the robbery was intended to secure the bird, then why did they shoot at it? And now that they've got it, does that mean the bird could be dead by now? Everything in this case seems to be pointing to one conclusion. The person who killed Morty was there to steal crackers.
After Detective Brewer collects the evidence, she turns to the body of Morty Nelson. She thoroughly inspects him to see if there were any clues left behind. But she finds nothing. The clock is ticking. Brewer has to act fast to find the killer before he strikes again. Detective Brewer knows that bright orange lipstick is worn by very few women, and she begins asking neighbors to the diner if they were aware of any woman who wears that particular shade.
Police!
Hours of door-to-door interviews finally give way to a name, Regina DeLange, a woman known in the area for being eccentric. Neighbors all offer fantastical stories about Regina, but despite all the hoopla surrounding her personality, not a single person who knows Regina knows where she lives. And the police have no address for her listed.
Sometimes it's better not to have a witness at all than have one who's certifiably crazy. But Detective Brewer needs to find this woman and make a decision, because it's very possible this woman isn't crazy. She's just eccentric.
Meanwhile, back at her apartment, Regina is having difficulty taking care of Crackers.
Want to try a granola bar? Whoa, you look scared.
She can't get him to eat anything, and worse still, she doesn't know what to feed him. But things take a dark turn when she receives a mysterious phone call. The voice sounds like the killer at the Birdcage Bar and Grill.
These are Regina's worst fears confirmed. The killer is making good on his promises, and she can't ignore him anymore.
After a few minutes of seemingly normal chit-chat, the killer says he's going to come over to her house so they can cook dinner because she owes him for not killing her. If she refuses, he'll burn down her apartment building.
At this point, Regina does not have much going for her. I mean, she doesn't know the guy's name. She doesn't even know where he lives. She got nothing for the police. And she's afraid that they might not believe her anyway because she was the one who took the bird. So if she then goes and accepts this guy's plan instead of going to the police, though, there's something wrong with her brain chemistry.
Regina dances around the man's request for as long as she can, trying to form a plan of action, but the more they talk, the more he turns on the charm. In just a few minutes, Regina's guard is down, and she jokes with the killer. She asks if he has any plans to kill her when he comes over, and he says he only wants his thank you dinner, and then he'll be on his way. Regina hesitates, and then agrees to the dinner if he promises she will not be harmed. Just before he arrives, Regina suddenly worries that if the killer sees Crackers again, he could be enraged. She stuffs Crackers into a kitchen cabinet and tells him to shut up.
Okay, bye, sweetie, bye, Crackers. Whew.
Minutes later, the killer arrives to Regina's apartment with a bag of groceries, and he tells her he will help her cook a gourmet Italian dinner. The two cook dinner, making conversation and having a good time. Regina's guard continues to drop, and he feeds her baby tomatoes. Her attraction to him grows stronger and stronger. They continue to spend the evening flirting and laughing, a budding romance between them.
Toast.
Over dinner, the man begins to allude to the reasons why he killed Morty, claiming that Morty had a terrible secret and debt that cost him his life. But the man says he's done killing. That was his last one.
This is easily the most bizarre day in Regina's life, and that's saying a lot. She's just cooked dinner for a man who's killed somebody, and now she's considering kissing him.
The killer asks Regina if the police ever visited her with questions about Morty. Regina is quick to tell him that she has stayed home all day, and she hasn't talked to anyone but him since she got back to her apartment.
I promise you. I pinky swear.
Regina has just made a potentially fatal mistake. she's let the killer know that she is the last and only witness.
Thank you very much.
I have some dessert that I brought.
I love desserts.
He gets out of his seat and pulls a pair of plastic gloves from a grocery bag, telling Regina that he wants to make her a special European dessert, but that he needs the gloves in case things get sticky.
I'm done.
You're gonna love it.
I'm sure I'm gonna love it.
As Regina listens, the killer quickly spins around and jabs a knife into her stomach, covering her mouth with his free hand. The killer slowly slumps Regina over the kitchen table. He runs back to the bag and withdraws a fake suicide letter and places it on the kitchen table. Hours later, Detective Brewer finally tracks down where Regina lives. She knocks on the door. No one answers. Upon entering Regina's home, Detective Brewer stumbles on a gruesome sight. A fairly new crime scene in which Regina DeLange has major stab wounds and is dead. Brewer quickly takes a first look over Regina, only to hear something chattering from a nearby cabinet. Inside, she finds crackers and immediately puts the bird on the counter as he keeps saying, "Robber, robber." After calming the bird down, Detective Brewer turns her attention to the suicide note on the kitchen table. A quick reading lets her know that the note is a cover-up. The letter has been typed instead of handwritten.
This guy is a major overachiever, yet still a minor idiot. If you come to a scene where somebody's dead and there's a typed suicide note, it's always suspicious because people tend to write out their last thoughts. And somebody who types it is probably trying to hide their own handwriting.
To make matters even more suspicious, Detective Brewer's quick search of Regina's apartment shows that she doesn't even own a computer or typewriter. But Brewer does find a stick of orange lipstick in Regina's bathroom. This means they're on the right path.
Now they've cleared up a few things. The killer was actually after whatever was in Morty's cash box, and they could care less about the bird. Otherwise, they would have taken it when they left Regina's house. The one thing they know for certain is that there's still a killer out there, and they need a break in this case.
Detective Brewer quickly tosses out the theory that Regina committed suicide. Now, her only clue may lie with Crackers, who continues to shriek. Out of leads, Detective Brewer goes over her case file one more time.
It's gotta be feeling pretty impossible for the detectives at this point. I mean, this was a really messy murder and there's a lot of evidence, but none of it ties together.
But as Brewer watches forensic experts go over Crackers with a comb for any physical evidence, she listens closely as Crackers continuously shrieks, "Robber, robber." Brewer finds it odd that out of all the words that Morty would have taught his parrot, that he would have taught him robber, as it would be a word the parrot would really never use. She remembers from an interview with the diner's cook that Morty taught Crackers the names of certain customers. That way they could be greeted when they entered the restaurant.
And suddenly, it clicks. They might have their best clue right in front of them.
Brewer posits that Crackers is not saying robber at all, but is actually saying the name, Robert. On a hunch, she races back to the bar and finds a number of receipts from the past few days on the counter. She thinks Morty must have known his killer, which is why he was killed instead of just robbed.
It's a crazy Hail Mary kind of hunch, but when somebody is on the loose out there killing people, you have to follow every lead.
Brewer finds a number of Roberts in the receipts and quickly scans the names in the police database to see if any had previous run-ins with the law. One, Robert Penny, committed a string of assaults and a number of past jobs that included him working with mafia types as an enforcer. Lately, it had been rumored that Penny's newest business venture involved extracting money from small business owners who take loans out with gangs. Detective Brewer sets out to find Robert Penny.
When you've got a rap sheet as long as Robert Penny's, guess what? You go right to the top of the suspect list. Congratulations. And Detective Brewer's thinking, you know, if Penny isn't actually the killer, he hangs around with a community of people who probably knows who did it.
Brewer learns that he works part-time at a department store. In under an hour, she's able to find him and bring him in for questioning.
So now Detective Brewer has to be careful. Her prime witness is a bird, a pretty bird. But imagine trying to take that to trial. You're gonna walk into the court and try not to be laughed out of the room by the judge and the jury.
So where were you the morning?
Brewer hammers Robert on his whereabouts the morning of Morty Nelson's death. But Penny's only alibi is that he was out for a morning walk. She questions him about his whereabouts later that night when Regina was killed.
I probably went home and took a nap.
The detective continues to hit him hard in questioning. Who takes a nap at 7 o'clock at night? When was the last time he visited Morty's restaurant? Finally, Brewer nails Robert with the question she's been hoping to ask him all along. Did you murder Morty Nelson? Robert denies any wrongdoing, saying,
You don't have any evidence. You don't have any witnesses. You don't have anything against me. You have to let me go.
But Detective Brewer plays a hand that leaves Robert stunned. She tells him that the fatal mistake he made was that he left a witness behind who successfully ID'd him.
This is an incredibly risky thing for a detective to do because she's given Robert all the information he needs to make sure he walks on this crime. All he has to do is play it smart because all Detective Brewer has is the testimony of a parent.
Detective Brewer can see Robert turn pale. She thinks she can hook him as long as she keeps the witness ambiguous enough. Meanwhile, Robert is thinking, who did he miss? Was someone in the kitchen, the bathroom, or are they here watching him?
Fine, I will tell you everything.
Robert finally cracks under the pressure and admits he killed Morty and stole the cash because Morty had not been making payments to Robert's bosses for nearly 18 months. After his confession, Detective Brewer asks Robert if he would like to face the individual who ID'd him at the scene of the crime. Scoffing, Robert obliges, wanting to see who would be at his mercy if he was ever released from prison. Brewer takes Penny out of the interrogation room, where he sees Crackers in a cage. The bird instantly begins yelling, Robert, Robert, Robert. Robert is stunned, a mix of anger and frustration at his being duped by a detective and a bird. But he knows that his confession has already put him away for good.
This is the kind of case that's solved only by a creative, even an imaginative detective. And what's ironic about this is while Robert Penny is going to be rotting behind bars for the rest of his life, Crackers has escaped. Crackers is going to live the rest of his life in a bird sanctuary. Never again behind bars, never again a jailbird.
On this episode of Bizarre Murders.
What was that?
When a loving husband barely escapes an attack on his life, the authorities think it was a random incident.
Oh, Lord.
But the husband is convinced he's a man marked for death.
You're a dead man, Gary.
Is he on a downward spiral of paranoid delusion?
My days are numbered.
Or is there really a killer lurking around the corner, waiting to finish the job?
It's the devil. The devil's coming for poor old Gary.
Gary and Leonie are high school sweethearts, looking forward to celebrating their 8th wedding anniversary.
Something sure smells lovely.
I've been baking cupcakes.
It's a beautiful morning, honey. Did you make us reservations at the bowling alley?
Sure did. I got us a surprise for dinner, too. We're all set.
That's my gal.
But, Gary, I was thinking, I could really use a new dress for dinner.
Well, I suppose it is our anniversary.
Thank you, sweetie. Hands off. Those are for the church outreach.
All right, all right.
Gary runs a small construction company, while Leonie is a dedicated homemaker with a passion for baking.
I'll see you later.
They're active members of the community, upright folks who never miss Sunday service and steer clear of vices like alcohol and gambling. Gary coaches youth football on weekends, while Leonie spends her spare time helping out the less fortunate.
Hey! Hey, you! Get back here, you rascal! That does it. This time I'm calling the sheriff. That's the 4th time this month, Bud. There's a pervert on the loose.
Now, don't fret, Leonie. We'll catch the panty phantom.
The what? Really, Bud?
We've had our crack surveillance unit on a suspect for a while now. Just kidding. But I'm pretty sure I know who it is. I just got to get him red-handed. You're not the only one in this town who's had some undergarments go missing.
Well, I'm sure you'll get your man, Bud.
Well, you can count on it.
Sheriff Arnold's is your typical small-town lawman, the kind of guy who'd rustle up a posse to catch a fugitive and rescue your cat from a tree the same day. Sure, his department's small, but what he lacks in resources, he makes up for with a personal touch. In his town, he is the law, and everyone knows it. And aside from the odd panty thief, almost everyone respects the law as he lays it down. But no town is 100% free from serious crime, and Arnold's town is no different.
Gary and Leonie return from their anniversary night out in high spirits.
3 doubles and a turkey. It doesn't get much better than that.
Don't let it get to your head, dear.
What was that? Wait here, honey.
But their celebration suddenly becomes a nightmare when they find a stranger in their house.
Gary! Are you all right? Help! Somebody help me! It's Leonie Culpepper. Someone just tried to kill Gary at our house. Get the sheriff.
Talk about a close call. I mean, finding some guy armed with a gun in your house usually doesn't end well. And despite what you might see on TV, guns actually don't jam all that often. So Gary's a very lucky man.
Now, what in the Sam Hill happened?
Gary and Leonie tell Sheriff Arnold's they must have interrupted a burglary and that a man in a mask was going to shoot them.
He looked like a heathen devil, but the Lord intervened and jammed up that gun of his.
Amen, honey. Jesus had our backs tonight.
Whoever it was looks like he helped himself to a snack. Anything else missing?
Why, he took my mother's gold rim coffee service. I mean, is nothing sacred?
That it?
Well, Bud, some of the underwear is missing from my laundry line.
What? You gotta be kidding me. Well, unless panty steal is getting contagious around here, looks like someone just crossed the line into felony territory.
You said the other day you knew that was, right?
I said I was pretty sure. But I'm gonna haul his ass in and make sure.
Now, Now, normally you'd need something more than the say-so of a witness to arrest somebody, say probable cause or a warrant from a judge. But sheriffs have a lot of leeway when it comes to how they enforce the law, especially in small towns like this. And no one's gonna argue when the boss wants to sit you down for a chinwag.
See, Mr. Sheriff, I've tried to stop. I have. You see, I just don't know, Sheriff. You know, I see them panties and I just gotta take them, you know? Gotta take them.
It doesn't take long for Sheriff Arnold's suspect to cave.
Okay, now. That's a good start. Listen up. Stealing ladies' panties, undergarments, excuse me. That's one thing. But breaking and entering, assault with a deadly weapon, maybe attempted murder, that's a whole different ballgame, son.
I'm sorry, sir. I don't know what you're talking about.
But the thief says he was working a double shift at a local hog processing plant when Gary was attacked. And a quick call to the factory manager confirms the suspect's alibi.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, bye now. That's mighty strange. How many panty snatchers can there be in one town? Well, we ain't done here yet. Maybe a couple of nights in my guest suite will cure you of that thieving habit of yours. Stand up.
Our sheriff thought he'd close this case faster than a scalded cat, as they say in Texas. But things ain't ever that simple, and now he's got some serious worry. 'Cause in a small town like this, word gets around. Not only is there a gunman at large, but everybody knows it, and they're looking to Arnold's to catch him. It's all part of being the biggest lawman in town.
In the days following the attack, Gary becomes increasingly afraid that his attacker will return, so he takes steps to protect himself.
Gary, that you? I got you some medication to help you sleep, dear. Gary, what's that?
Can't rely on Jesus alone, sweetie. So I got this here peacemaker. Got to look out for my own self.
Well, just don't bring it to the dinner table. Makes me nervous. Here, take one of these.
You can't blame a guy in this situation for arming up. Hell, I would. A man's house is his castle, after all, and for all Gary knows, the masked marauder could be fixing to come back and get rid of the witnesses. But it's a fine line between being on high alert and seeing enemies everywhere.
Unable to shake the fear that the man in the mask will come back, Gary's nerves start to unravel.
Dear Lord, please help the sheriff catch that man.
Who's there? I got a gun. I'll shoot if I have to. Oh, Lord.
As the days go by with no news from Sheriff Arnold's, Gary's fear starts to get the better of him. He barricades himself at home, hopefully safe from the outside world.
Hello?
You're a dead man, Gary. I'm coming for you. Your days are numbered. Your soul is mine. Look outside.
Sweet Jesus. It's the devil. The devil's coming for poor old Gary. Oh, Lord. Satan's got my number. Oh, Lord.
Yep, it sure looks like someone's out to get Gary, or at least mess with his head big time. From where I'm standing, this looks like a classic stalker situation. Now, a lot of stalkers don't actually want to kill their victims. I mean, then all the fun would be over, right? But as far as Gary's concerned, his days really are numbered, and that'll put the scare into anybody.
Now he thinks the devil himself is on his tail, bud. It's just too much to bear.
As her husband falls apart, Leonie seeks consolation and answers from Sheriff Arnold's.
I'm telling you, Leonie, it's probably just a drifter. Chances are he skipped town. He's long gone. I've seen it before.
Try telling Gary that.
Has he been to a head shrinker yet?
He won't leave the house. But what if Gary's right? I mean, the mask, the bullets, he keeps getting those calls.
To my mind, it's probably just kids. Saw you guys on the news, getting some cheap thrills out of scaring y'all.
I'm more scared of Gary than some bunch of kids. He's deranged, but he's not himself. Sheriff, he bought a gun and he's taken to the bottle.
Well, nothing wrong with a little nip now and again. But guns and whiskey's not a good combination. You're right about that. So, I'd hide his whiskey and find a shrink that does house calls, or call in the pastor, or both.
Even if it is all a bad joke, Arnold's in a tricky predicament because these cases are notoriously hard to investigate. Whoever's tormenting poor Gary is operating at a distance, and with no leads on who attacked him, Arnold's basically investigating a case of prank calls and Nicky Nine Doors. But that assault caused a crack in Gary's mind, and I'd say he's in real danger of breaking down completely. Arnold's might be the law around here, but he's no psychiatrist. There's not a whole hell of a lot he can do.
My days are numbered.
Bud, I don't know what to do. He's getting worse. I'm afraid he'll do something to me.
Now, why don't you come on down to the office? I can send a patrol car around.
My days are numbered. Hey, who are you talking to?
Leonie, what's going on?
Is it him?
No, honey. Remember what the pastor told you. Keep the Lord close to your heart. Yes. Give me the gun. Okay.
No, I need that. Give it back. I need it. I need that.
Step away.
I need that. Give me that.
Ow, you're hurting me. Ah!
Criminy!
When Sheriff Arnold's arrives at the scene, he fears the worst.
Oh, Lord.
But the situation isn't what he was expecting.
Put the gun down. Put the gun down on the floor.
Gary attacked me. Forgive me, Jesus. I didn't mean to do it.
Yeah, Betty, it's Arnold's. I'm gonna need backup and ambulance right away. Got a male gunshot victim. Vital signs absent. Roger. Everything's gonna be just fine, Leonie. Why don't you come on down to the station and we'll talk about what just happened.
Jesus might forgive Leonie, but the law still has to make up its mind. You don't just say, it's a shame Gary took 2 in the chest, and go home. You know, a lot of people ask me about the self-defense thing, and if I'm honest, there's no hard and fast rule, because every situation's different. Whatever went down in that kitchen, Leonie's still got a lot of explaining to do.
Now, darling, I know you must feel lower than a gopher hole, but why don't you tell me how it all went down?
I was on the phone with you and he just snapped. Oh, God.
Leonie tells Sheriff Arnold's that she had no choice but to defend herself.
I knew he was going to kill me. He came at me with a gun, but I managed to get it away. But then it went off.
It went off twice.
The first one was an accident, but it didn't stop him. He had the strength of 10 men. So I fired a second shot.
It's a crying shame. crying shame.
What happens now?
Well, we're processing the scene. The coroner's got to weigh in. The prosecutor. But from where I sit, you did what you had to do.
Sad to say, but we in law enforcement hear Leonie's story all the time. A woman who's forced to defend herself from her violent husband. And around these parts, good luck finding a jury that'll take issue with using a gun to do it. I'm not saying it's a one-horse race, but the chances of Leonie doing any time for taking down her delusional husband are pretty slim.
Gary's death is ruled accidental by the coroner, and no charges are laid against Leonie.
He was a good man, Bud.
God bless him. He was a good man.
With Gary now laid to rest, Sheriff Arnolds closes the case.
And bless this food, O Lord, so that it may nourish our body and soul. Amen.
I do so love your manly praying voice, dear.
With Gary's generous life insurance policy, Leonie starts rebuilding her life.
Now, what was the surprise you said you had for me?
She eventually meets a new man at church, a successful car salesman named Ralph. After a brief courtship, they get married, and Ralph moves into Leonie's house.
A sedan! Oh, Ralph, you should have. You're so good to me.
What can I do for you, son?
Well, Sheriff, I'm here about Leonie Culpepper.
What about Leonie?
The man says his name is Colton. He's a long-haul trucker and an old acquaintance of Leonie's.
Back before she settled down, mind you, Sheriff. Let's just say Leonie and me, we used to shoot the lights out something fierce, if you get my meaning. But these days, well, I think she's fixing to shoot something else. Or should I say somebody? You still going to church?
Sure am.
Dang, Leonie, you're looking hotter than a firecracker.
And you're just as handsome as ever, ain't you, Colty?
What do I owe the pleasure?
Colton claims Leonie contacted him recently about some work she needed done, and he'd driven down from Houston to talk it over.
You'll make a lot of money, honey pie. And there may be more than just money in it for you, if you do a good job.
Colton reveals that Leonie asked him to kill her second husband, Ralph.
You don't care how exactly. Just that it gets done.
Well, hell's bells, son. That's quite a yarn. How do I know you just ain't yanking my chain?
Because she paid me $5 large up front, sir.
Colton says he had no intentions of killing anyone, but just in case Leonie thought he'd turn her in, he pretended to go along with the plan.
I come straight here. She got war paint on, Sheriff. I swear.
Just when you think you know someone, bam. Turns out they're the devil in disguise. A cupcake baking housewife hiring a hitman sounds pretty unlikely. But Arnold's is looking at Leonie in a whole different light now, and he's wondering just how accidental Gary's death really was. Looks like the long-closed case of Gary and the man in the mask just got reopened.
When you supposed to see her next?
Matter of fact, I'm supposed to see her this afternoon.
Well, if all this is true, and I ain't saying that it is, then I got a job for you too, boy. You know what a wire is?
To find out if he's telling the truth, Sheriff Arnold's has Colton wear a wire to record his meeting with Leonie.
You're good and deputized now. I want you to record everything, you hear?
Yeah, I hear you.
Now, if you're pulling a fast one, I swear, I'll sizzle your bacon.
Throwing some untrained hayseed into a murder-for-hire case seems pretty dumb, right? But it actually happens all the time. Not all confidential informants are pros, and that can be a good thing because when you need your suspect to incriminate themselves, you don't want your CI to have any whiff of the law on them. And you'd be amazed what some crooks will say once they trust you.
I just knew I could count on you, Colty.
While Ralph is at work, Leone and Colton discuss how to best take him out.
Well, shooting him is probably easiest. Just make sure he's dead. The last guy screwed up real bad.
Last guy?
At first, Colton thinks Leone means she tried to take out Ralph once before, but he quickly realizes she's talking about Gary. Leone tells Colton that being married to Gary was like living in a cage, and the only way out was to get rid of him for good. And she'd found the perfect person for the job, somebody no one would suspect. The plan was simple. Give the vagrant a gun, a disguise, and a key to the house, and tell him to make it look like a break-in. But her man botched the job. When the gun jammed and the would-be killer fled, Leone knew she had a problem on her hands.
So now Leone has to stall an attempted murder investigation until she thinks of another way to get Gary out of the picture. You talk about your first world problems. She tries to pin suspicion on the panty phantom, but the guy has an alibi and Gary now has a gun of his own. She can't exactly ask the homeless dude to give it another try. I mean, he's long gone anyhow. So what's a wife who wants her husband dead to do?
He screwed up real bad. So I just had to kill stupid old Gary myself.
Leone's admission on the wire brings Sheriff Arnold's calling with an arrest warrant.
So much for self-defense. But why, Leone? Gary was a good man.
He might have been a good man, but he was a cheap son of a bitch. He'd squeeze a dollar bill till Washington hollered. I wanted more, Bud. Like dinner out more than once a year. But Gary just didn't care. His life was pouring concrete and coaching ball.
Leone says that depending on Gary for money was suffocating her, but divorce was out of the question. She risked being left with nothing. Gary, however, had a life insurance policy worth $250,000.
So you're saying that Gary was worth more dead than he was alive?
That's about the all of it, Bud. Get the sheriff!
Leone tells Sheriff Arnold that when the homeless hitman failed to kill Gary, she needed a new plan. And Gary's reaction to the assault gave her an idea. Leone spread the word that Gary was becoming increasingly unstable.
I just don't know, Pastor. I got him some sleeping pills, but they just don't work. He's been pacing all night. I've been scared for my safety.
Leone realized that if she took advantage of Gary's fear that someone wanted him dead,
oh, Lord,
she could lay out the groundwork for a claim of self-defense before killing him herself. So Leone kept the pressure on until Gary was close to snapping.
You're a dead man, Gary. I'm coming for you. Your days are
numbered and your soul is mine.
There's an old Ingrid Bergman movie called Gaslight about a guy who tries to convince his wife that she's going insane in order to cover up a murder he'd committed years before. And that's exactly what Leone does. She gaslights her husband, manipulating his paranoia to make him think there's a killer around every corner. And as an added bonus, if Gary ever figures out it's Leone all along, he'll have no credibility. In any case, it wouldn't be hard for anyone to believe Gary was capable of attacking Leone and that she would defend herself accordingly. Even I have to admit it was a brilliant plan.
How does Ralph figure in all this?
Well,
Leone tells Sheriff Arnold that when Gary's insurance money started to run out, she started looking around for another husband with a good insurance policy.
Besides, Bud, once I got a taste of living by my own rules, I just knew I couldn't go back. At least not for long.
Why didn't you just get a job like regular folk?
Doing what? Cupcakes make you fat, not rich.
So you figured you'd married Ralph and get away with murder a second time, huh?
It worked once. Why not?
You're a real piece of work, Leone. You had us all fooled, make no mistake. But you're going to prison for life if you're getting a day. And that's something you can hang your apron on. Now stand up.
Leone's charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy. Sentenced to life without parole, she consoles herself by volunteering in the prison kitchen.
You know, pushing someone over the edge ain't easy, even when they're already halfway there. It takes the kind of planning only a psychopath is capable of. Gary might have been bugging out, but he wasn't crazy. He knew in his bones someone was out to get him. He just didn't realize it was his own wife. Leone fooled a lot of people, but she couldn't get away with it forever, because here's the thing. You just can't gaslight the law. Sooner or later, we'll see behind the mask, and you'll be behind bars.